Hello again, everyone. Mark Truss. This lecture is on stakeholder roles and perspectives. Let me share my screen here. Hopefully, you should be able to see that okay. I like this quote here, again, from David Ogilvy. You'll see a lot of that in this course. Much of the messy advertising you see on television today is the product of committees. Committees can criticize advertisements, but they should never be allowed to create them. All right, taking a step back again, the certificate is all about a consumer-centric approach to the development of marketing activities, setting goals and objectives, assessing the requirements for effective marketing and advertising to support those goals, actionable insights, integrating that into the creative development process, evaluating our media choices, and assessing the effectiveness of that campaign. Informing creative development builds on a lot of the ideas you saw in the Foundations course as well as other ones. And this course is to help you walk away with the ability to justify the role of research in the creative development process, recommend research for the creative development process, design a research plan for creative, integrate insight inputs for an impactful creative brief, recommend the right research tools, create a story-driven analysis, and lead effective conversations across multiple stakeholders, which we're going to talk more about today. Again, we're still here in Module 1. After this, we go into understanding a little bit more about how people think and how people perceive the advertising and messages we are creating. So again, stakeholder roles and perspectives, the third lecture in this module. So let's start. Stakeholders in the advertising development process. You don't know me and I don't know you. We just happen to have the same problem. And that may, in some situations, describe the stakeholders in an advertising setting. Getting to effective advertising requires bringing together a lot of different people and managing these different functions with different skill sets, and in some cases, different and sometimes competing agendas. So, there are many stakeholders who have a seat at the table during this creative development process. You have people from the marketer side, brand managers, CMOs, advertising managers. You have people from the agency, account leads who manage the agency team as well as the relationship with the client, strategists or planners, and of course the creatives who are building these creating these creative assets. You have researchers, analytics people, data scientists, and often you have additional partners at the table. You have PR firms, design teams. Sometimes you have legal or regulatory people. Sometimes you have DE&I people and others that are part of this whole process. Marketers are really working hard to sort of get out of siloed thinking where, oh, let's meet with the ad agency today, let's meet with the PR firm tomorrow, and really bring them together, which often means there's a lot of people at the table. Media people are often at the table as well. And this is actually, in my opinion, a very good thing because everybody is working to the same agenda and the same marching orders, which in the end often leads to better creative output. From a research, analytics, and data perspective, there's, again, a number of different stakeholders, all with different perspectives and sometimes different goals, right? So at the marketer, there are research people, there are data people, there are analytics teams. At the creative agency, you have those same functions. At the media agency, you have those same functions. You have primary research, data, and analytics companies who are part of the process. You have syndicated research companies that are part of the process. So you have research people from all these different stakeholders often coming together to work together in this process. Now, with that said, there are some stubborn stereotypes of key stakeholders. And in some work that we did with the ARF Creative Council, which I'll talk about more in a second, we uncovered that there are these stakeholders, these stereotypes of the key stakeholders. And these stereotypes, right? Stereotypes don't come from nowhere. Sometimes they are rooted in some level of truth. It can create tension and a lack of trust between the stakeholders. So some of the stereotypes that we learned about in the research for this white paper from the marketer side is that the perception, the stereotypical perception is that marketers are only interested in ads that drive short-term sales at the expense of brand building, that marketers want ads that are very rational, functional, claim and USP driven, and that marketers don't understand creative nor the creative process. These are beliefs that are often thought to be true at creative agencies. Whether they are true or not, they're often thought to be true. Perceptions of the creative agency, stereotypical perceptions, is that the creative agency is only interested in winning agency awards for creativity, regardless of whether or not that ad performs well in market and drives sales. That the creative agency does not understand how the client's business works, and that the creative agency can be prima donnas and difficult to manage and difficult to work with. Again, I think researchers and marketers to some degree believe that that's true about creative agencies, and in some cases it is, and in some cases it's not. The researcher is often seen by the client as the arbiter of truth, and the researcher is seen by the agency stereotypically as an impediment to creativity and getting good work out, right? Now, again, I hear these stereotypes all the time. You can imagine if you're coming together in a partnership to get to great creative, how these perceptions can derail that process and create problems with lack of trust in how we all work together. This is the research that I was talking about. So I was part of this as part of the Creative Council that looked into this end of 2019, how to get better creative from better insights. And this was looking at and revealing some of the challenges and solutions to managing the marketer agency researcher relationship as it relates to insights and research in the creative process. We did both qualitative interviews and surveys among people on the marketer side, people on the research side, people on the agency side to understand this. And let me just take you through a couple of the findings from it, because I think they're relevant to this discussion. The first thing we found is, there's a bit of a language problem. We have that, the mini lecture here on key terminology. Well, not everyone agrees on all the same language. And certain definitions of insights, we hear this is one of the areas where the language isn't clear, are broader than others. For example, while some practitioners use the term data and insights interchangeably, here's one strategic planner. The word insight is very misused and misunderstood. There are lots of observations dressed up as insights. And if you think back to the Foundations course where we talked about what is an insight, you will understand what that means. A creative person, insights are too generic and not pointed enough to provoke provocative creative, right? And I talked before about insights being inspiring. That's what this creative person is talking about. So as part of this, the ARF Creative Council came up with a couple of definitions. Data is raw information used as a basis for analysis or developing insights. Data alone is not the insight. An insight is a person or group's understanding of individuals' motivations that drive their actions, and understanding of relationships, often cause and effect relationships between consumers' attributes, attitudes, experiences, and behavior. An insight is not data or an observation, but often comes from the analysis of data or observations. So we put that forward, trying to sort of level set. Copy testing is another term that not everyone agrees with in terms of its definition, and they don't agree on its value in the process. If you look at the chart down here, 3 groups of people: researchers, creative strategists, and titled other, but this is really media companies and marketers. And the question that was asked is, how valuable would you say copy testing is in helping to develop the actual creative assets, which is what this course is all about, or core creative concepts of an ad campaign, also what this course is about. And what you see really is the big difference between how researchers say, wow, copy testing is really important to both of these things. Marketers and media people agree as well. But look at the ad agency people, creatives and strategic planners, think that copy testing is significantly less valuable in the process, right? Now, part of this issue is the perception at agencies that copy testing is not a diagnostic or a developmental tool, which I disagree with, but rather it's a decision-making tool, right? So let's put the ad into a copy test, and if consumers don't like it, we're going to kill the ad. That's how some creative and strategy people see copy testing. And if it's used that way, I think most people, researchers and strategists, would agree that's not the intended use for pre-testing or copy testing. So creating a clear understanding upfront of how different tools, specifically copy testing, will or will not be used in the process, with input from all stakeholders, can go a long way to bridging this gap. So having that discussion upfront in the creative development process can help align the marketer, the agency, and the researcher on what role copy testing will play. And we're going to talk more about that copy testing in Module 6. Another key finding is that there are some trust issues between the stakeholders. Here's a creative person on the left. Oftentimes, research has determined final decisions for creative development, like we were just talking about. I believe that research should be used as a form of reference. It should be informative rather than the final say. The final decision should be made factoring in all aspects. A planner, clients, marketers can wield their data as a weapon. Whew, that's strong. Here's a creative. Creatives don't want to see their work judged by a black box. The term black box here refers to a belief among some people in the agency business that copy testing systems are opaque, and that even when it's been explained to them how the methodology works, they feel like the results don't always line up with what the ad is or how the ad is working, and that there's some disconnect, and that there's a mystery to how it actually works. So their work is judged by a black box or some kind of arbitrary assessment, and that's what often occurs with copy testing. Again, talking about this up front and how it will be used can help get around that problem. We also learned that there's, who feels like they should own the process of research in the creative development. And here, this is interesting. Again, the dark purple are researchers. This lighter purple, titled Other, again, is really media people and marketers. And this very light purple is creative and strategists. But here's the thing you should look at, right? Who thinks who do you think should own or be responsible for the research process when developing creatives? Well, marketers are more likely to think they should. Researchers are more likely to think they should. And the creative agency is more likely to think they should. Now, this gets tricky, right? Why, honestly, why should any one stakeholder control the process? Well, often, quite bluntly, it's who's paying for it. And often it's the marketer who is paying for the research. And the marketer is very mindful of separation of church and state, right? They don't necessarily want the creative agency controlling the research because there is a belief that perhaps the data could be interpreted in favor of the creative agency if the creative agency is managing it. As a researcher on the creative side, I can tell you that's not the case, but I've heard clients air this concern, and I completely understand why they would think that. The way I get around it as a researcher at an agency is I say to the client, listen, I'm happy to have you partner with every step in the process, and all of the data that we collect is available to you whenever you want in whatever format you want. And then we can discuss the analysis of that data when we get it back. But this sort of implies that there's a trust issue when everyone says, hey, I want to control it, I want to control it, I want to control it. Here's one solution that we've learned, and I don't know if you've worked with Anne Green at Cantor, one of my favorite people. And Anne works a lot with copy testing, and Anne and I had some shared clients over the years where we struggled with this issue. And what Anne and I came up with is something we call a Scrum approach, which is where you establish a team, a special team, when you are in the creative development process, and you have a dedicated person from the marketer, from the research side, and from the agency, just 3 people. And their mission is they are accountable for getting to the best quality creative that's going to most likely achieve the objectives of the campaign. And they work together, sharing all of the information and all of the data and all of the methodology and research, and they share it with each other throughout the entire process and agree on how they're going to test creatives, how research is going to be used, and how copy testing will be utilized in the process. And for clients that we've seen use this approach, they often come up with what I would consider to be much better quality creative and a less tense relationship between the stakeholders in the process. So think about that, a Scrum approach to getting to this. Misaligned agendas are also creating problems. And the practice of gatekeeping of data and creating silos up here, strategic planner. A lot of times I found research is used to award bonuses, and I've seen that in a couple of cases where the marketer is bonused based on copy test results, not based on how well the ad ultimately does in market, but 2 stages before when they're doing copy testing. And the reason they do that is because to look at it in market, there's a lot of other factors that go into how successful creative is, right? Which doesn't help make an effective creative product that works. It's just one that works to pass the test. And in this case, by test, they mean copy testing. A researcher, qualitative insights are not flowing from organizations to the creative agencies. There is a disconnect in organizations between people developing insights and historical internal clients, even among internal analysts at brands. I've heard marketers tell the agency, these are the insights we are allowed to share with you, which of course doesn't make sense, right? Why wouldn't we share all insights? And a strategic planner. Marketers have become very savvy with their own data, especially in quantifying the opportunities. However, it's not ideal if they are too data reliant, right? This is a creative process. Data is a good part of it, but you can cross a line, is what this strategic planner is saying. We want to be confident and data informed, but not data driven. Sometimes we get too many irrelevant data. And we also see, which of the following steps is the creative development process do you think research and data are most helpful? Where should data be performed? Right, and we have deciding on final creative that you're going to roll out, determining alternative creative approaches, channel planning, defining the objectives, review of prior creative. Well, here's a couple things you see. On deciding which creative actually gets used in market and determining alternative creative approaches, marketers and researchers think research needs to be used there. Creative agencies don't so much. Same thing with determining alternative creative approaches, right? So this again saying creatives really don't want research deciding things, rather informing things. Yeah. So a couple of potential solutions that may ameliorate this problem. One is starting early on in the process and aligning on what are the common goals, what are the incentives, what are the responsibilities, and that can help reconcile the divides across these groups, right? You can't sort of do this when you're in the final stages of creating. You have to agree upfront, what are we doing, how are we doing it, and how will it be used? And if you have adopted a Scrum team approach, well, that Scrum team needs to start early, and those two can work together. Okay, I hope that was helpful, talking about stakeholders' roles and perspective. That's it for this lecture. Be well, everyone. See you soon.